for other diseases, there is also a slowness to embrace the brave new world of genetics. Sickle cell anemia is another of Britain's most prevalent genetic diseases, with 250,000 people being carriers. Starting in childhood, crises attack every few months. In London, it's now one of the commonest reasons for admission to hospital. Simeon has just arrived in hospital in South London. His mother Helen is at his side.
Simeon had gone skating with his friends, but he said as he got off the bus and walked down the road, he just felt that his legs going, and he had all this pain in his stomach and his hips, and then he just found himself literally on the floor, and it was only because his friends had seen him, and they picked him up and they called the ambulance. When we got here, they'd give him a small shot of morphine so that it could help stabilise the pain.
And how often does it happen to Simeon?
It happens probably about every 4 months, 5 months. I'm hoping he'll learn to live with it, because this is the only thing we can do. There isn't actually a cure for sickle cell. All this could be prevented if I'd have learned to know about my sickle cell genes, how they pass on, but I don't think in our times we were given that choice of a sickle-free life. I don't think we were given that choice.
Helen has spent much of her life in and out of accident and emergency, because she, Simeon, and her daughter Misha all have the disease.
Sickle cell is a red blood disorder, and instead of the cells being a circular shape, they're a sickle shape, and sickle is like a half moon shape. So usually the red blood cells, or even your white blood cells, they flow down the arteries and your veins quite easily. But when they're a half moon shape, they can get stuck going down, or they can clump together, and it becomes difficult.
Feels crazy. Crazy. It just feels like sharp pains mixed with somebody kind of constantly stabbing you, having no mercy.
And then you've got to get the morphine.
And that's to me, that's like, because it's so great. I mean,
it wipes out all pain, doesn't it?
Wipes out all pain. If you get a good dosage of it.
Feels like the worst thing, like, oh my days, why didn't I think about how this was going to affect her before I was having children? Or it's really awful to see your own child in pain like that.
Sickle cell is passed on when both parents are carriers. The NHS offers a test in pregnancy, by which point the only way to prevent a sickle cell birth is abortion. And even then, this system only really works if both parents have been tested at an early stage. So Helen's now chasing the 50% of fathers who aren't tested.
We arrange screenings for the sickle cell DVD. It's called The Family Legacy. I think it's important to raise awareness because sickle cell's like a silent disorder. I think because it's a black disorder, it doesn't get a lot of publicity.
Sickle cell is really rare, right? 1 in every 2,000 births, but 1 in every 4 West Africans is a carrier. If you are a carrier of the gene, we'd like the father to come in for a screening also.
Have your attention, please.
Because men are finding it hard to have men come in and get screened to see if they've got the sickle trait or not. So a lot of the time when it does happen in real life, it's always blamed on the woman, and the woman can't have a full sickle cell child on her own. She has to have 1 trait from the father and 1 trait from the mother.
Huh? Are we unknowingly spreading sickle cell?
Yeah, obviously what's going on. Yeah.
And this is why we're doing the awareness programme.
We're ignorant. We're ignorant of the fact.
I'm a carrier myself. I found out in similar circumstances like in the movie. And my partner's pregnant and found out then. But my partner's a carrier as well. So the question was posed like, what did we want to do? I don't think that was a reason to actually abort a child or anything like that. I wouldn't be doing that.
But surely there's another way. One which might prevent such difficult decisions being forced on parents in the excitement of pregnancy.
Preconception is the way to go, really, because then it means people are aware of their genotype before they actually conceive. And this will do that. This sort of session will also actually do that, because if you're encouraging people to go for testing, this actually could lead to preconception, because, you know, I'm assuming some of these young men are going to go on and conceive.
People go to the doctors every 6 months kind of thing to get a little checkup to make sure that we don't have no AIDS, no chlamydia, hepatitis, etc., etc. Why couldn't they just take another test for the sickle cell as well? Do you know what I mean? Like kill two birds with one stone.
Shouldn't the NHS offer to test everyone long before they conceive, so they can have many more choices? They could then opt for PGD or choose sickle-free partners, as well as abortion. In Nottingham, GP Nadeem Qureshi is already ahead of the game in offering preconception testing to all his patients.
Like in this practice, as soon as a patient registers, they're offered the sickle cell and thalassemia screening test.
And what's the shortcoming of how the NHS deals with it at the moment?
It's not thought about it at all. We're at a point where we're developing the technology. It's a bit like you've got yourself a customised car, a car that just goes for a Frankfurt Motor Show. But no one's thought, how do you go from that to the car that's out on the street?
And so what should GPs be doing about sickle cell?
Well, sickle cell, at the moment, there's a national screening program for sickle cell, which is at the antenatal stage. Talking to patients, they're asking, why can't this be offered pre-pregnancy? And the only setting where pre-pregnancy sickle cell screening can take place is in the primary care setting. And in that way, they don't have to worry as soon as they get pregnant, oh, am I at risk? They've already thought through the process. Am I at risk of sickle cell? If I'm at risk, what options are open to me?
So should the NHS be offering much more screening for genetic conditions? Should we all be tested for everything? I've come to the NHS body who make these decisions, the National Screening Committee. Their director is Anne Mackey.
To test for the genetic conditions on the individual thoughts of a GP means that they might be offering tests which are not accurate, are highly likely to give false positives, that a positive test doesn't necessarily mean that you're actually going to get the disease. There are all sorts of reasons why just saying I think I should offer these greater range of tests isn't a good idea.
If I'm a GP and somebody comes into my surgery asking for advice about family planning, and I'm in an at-risk group for sickle cell, for example, your advice would be that no discussion about hereditary disease happens?
If people want to find that out, then that's up to them. It's back to this business of if you're the patient and you come along and say, I want to know some of these things, then that's...
But if you're going to find out about fertility and you don't know anything about sickle cell,
yep,
then it's not the GP's job to say, did you know there's a disease that you might be at risk of? And we have a test for it.
We haven't either recommended or rolled out a programme that says GPs should be offering information like that to everybody who comes in these circumstances. No, but we're actively looking at whether we should do that and how feasible that is. The ethics are so different. If a person wants something for themselves, there's a conversation about whether that's helpful to them or not, or whether they really understand what it is, but that's quite different from us offering something that they've never heard of or never worried about before, because we know that we will do some people harm, we will give some people the wrong result.
I hope that these considerations bear fruit soon. Because although we might not want the NHS to systematically test each of us for every risk, surely it's the role of doctors to warn us all of our genetic possibilities, and then we can make the decisions. That's what I did, and my results are now in.